So after the relatively warmer than I thought usual temperature for October and even parts of September, now all of a sudden we're getting hit by this Arctic blast arriving basically this week for the eastern half of the United States. It says that it'll be actually around 32 degrees as far south as Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia. It says widespread 20s are expected across the area, with some areas in the teens in the northern states. I think even Canada said in the single digits. Said on Tuesday there would be some kind of front moving through Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, dropping more than a couple inches of snowfall for those regions. On Wednesday, a surface low offshore will bring snowfall to the New England area as well as Boston. And in this graphic, the blue area shows the frost. And I'll just let the screen kind of sit here for a couple seconds here. If you want to pause it, you can check it out. But this is early morning for the chemtrail forecast. It's already over, of course. Afternoon and evening for the 21st. This is overnight for Monday. And this is into Tuesday. Pretty much clear, but you can see that front coming in from the west. Here's Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, hitting the plains in parts of the northern Midwest and parts of the West. This was the last Haarp status for the United States. This was from, almost 3 days ago, 10/18, so it's probably changed, but it was coming off California and the West Coast. Pretty much nothing on the east. Russian volcanic eruption prompts airspace warnings in Alaska. The volcano in Russia's, I think it's pronounced Kamchatka, region climaxed a week of eruptions by spewing ash of 33,000 feet into the air over the weekend. The warning was issued. It was considered a significant meteorological event because of the wind patterns changing. It carried the ash over the Bering Sea, Aleutian Islands. In Australia, they're having wildfires. They're battling an enormous blaze in southeastern Australia on Monday, with officials warning it could merge with another and create a megafire if conditions worsen. The high winds and searing heat across the state of New South Wales last week took more than 200 homes. Main concern Monday is near the town of Lithgow, west of Sydney. The perimeter of the fire is 300 kilometers. There's still 63 alight and 17 out of control. Concern Tuesday and Wednesday could push it into another blaze at nearby Mount Victoria in the Blue Mountains, then move towards populated areas of Katoomba and Laura. A second sea serpent washes up in California. You've probably seen this from the 19th. So it was supposed to be a very rare event. So it's a discovery of a lifetime. Just happened. What was that last week? 13.5-foot long oarfish, which washed up on the beach of Oceanside Harbor in California, is the second of the rarely seen creatures to be found in a matter of days. Someone made a very good comment, and I thought that, when these things, something like this happens, and they're kind of like deep sea creatures or something like that, and basically how animals and fish and reptiles can sense things in nature that humans probably could if they really wanted to, but we're not really tuned in to nature anymore. We've been completely disconnected with it. Not everybody, but a lot of people have. And some people think, or scientists think, that animals can't predict earthquakes. And so that was kind of a good point. And one thing that I do remember, I'll never forget about the Pacific Northwest, is that they have the possible earthquake, a 9.0, that will eventually hit, according to scientists. It has to do with the Cascadia subduction zone. The last one was in 1700. They say the massive earthquake and tsunami could soon strike the northwest U.S. coast, killing more than 10,000 people, flooding entire towns, and causing damage totaling $32 billion. The latest report claimed that there is a 100% chance of a monster earthquake occurring in the region, but they don't know when. Kind of gives you an idea, though. By the year 2060, if they haven't had an earthquake, it'll exceed the 85% of all known intervals of earthquake reoccurrence in 10,000 years. The interval between the quakes ranges from a few decades to thousands of years, but we already have exceeded about 3/4 of them. This is my website, Global Government News, so welcome everybody. It's October 21st, Monday, 2013. GGNonline.net is my website, and donations are appreciated, and those that have, I appreciate it very much. Sailors discover the ocean is dead. I thought this was an interesting little article. A yachtsman shares his tales. But basically, he's had all kinds of voyages, and he said here it's a trip he made 10 years ago, but one that seemed unrecognizable this time around. A decade ago, seabirds, fish surrounded his boat. This time, the air was empty, and in 28 days it took to get to Japan, he caught just 2 fish. But he was not alone. A large fishing boat made contact, handing him 5 big sugar bags full of fish. Said they were good, big fish, but much more than he could eat. Says the fisherman explained they wanted only tuna, all the other dead by catch was returned to sea. They just trawled that reef day and night and stripped it of everything that was living. And they said it wasn't the low point of the story. After departing from Osaka, Japan, it felt that as if the ocean itself was dead. He didn't see birds, sharks, dolphins, fish, typically studded his voyage. He said it was an unbelievable load of garbage, part of it that propelled there by the tsunami that hit Japan. He sailed through oil slicks, broken chairs, toys, wooden power poles, and a factory chimney. There was so much garbage in a lot of places we couldn't start our motor for fear of entangling the propeller and the masses of pieces of rope and cable. He said it's an unheard of situation out in the ocean. I've heard this come up in the news recently, and I'm not really sure why I couldn't find it again, but this is from 2012 of November, almost a year ago. Scientists puzzled by dolphins washing ashore with bullet wounds and mutilated fins. So, missing jaws and hacked off fins, including bullet wounds. Massive moose. They're saying there's a massive moose die-off in the U.S., and scientists basically don't know what it is. All across the U.S., moose are dying, and scientists don't know how to save them. From the East Coast to the West Coast to the Rockies, their numbers are declining at an unprecedented rate. They blame it on disease, climate change, which I guess can be the aerosols they're spraying, and weather modification, overhunting. But, they say scientists don't know how to save America's moose. Well, if our society is kind of out of touch with nature, then how could we come up with a solution if we're causing it? And our society isn't really one that looks at animals like that. I mean, they're in our way. That's how they're viewed. They're encroaching on us. When people drive their cars and they get hit by a deer, that deer is encroaching on them, not the other way around. That's how it's seen. 30 children suffer organ failure after being stung by giant hornets, which have already killed more than 40 people in China. They said here that one person said she was stung 70 times on the head by a hornet swab. More than 40 people have been killed in the epidemic. And this is a little bit older of news, but it's still relevant with the articles I was covering. But the children are being taken to the hospital for basically organ failure. They have several blood transfusions. Basically, these toxins from the stings are getting in there. This is a crazy story. Charges possible for Boy Scouts leader who toppled Utah rock formation. They're going to face criminal charges for purposely knocking over an ancient Utah desert rock formation and posting a video of it online. So, I mean, not the wisest thing for a Boy Scout leader, but at the same time, I don't understand what the big freaking deal is about this. Why so many people are saying that these people need to be exterminated, the human race needs to be exterminated, just for some really god-awful comments. Why people are getting all in a tizzy about this when you have a dead sea with garbage floating in there, radioactive levels 6,500 times of Fukushima, and they're worried about a stupid rock being turned over. But that's the thing about it. We're talking about interacting with nature and being out of touch with it. It's like when you go to the national parks, there was one where, you try to go fishing, you can't really fish, you can't do this, can't do that, can't do that, and everything's about viewing aesthetic. So you can look at it, but you can't touch it. They don't want you interacting with it. It's supposed to be something strange, and, humans are somehow not a part of nature, so by interacting with nature, you're destroying it. I'm sure most of you understand what I'm talking about as far as all the laws that the government has. Just thought about something. They said here, this has been formed for literally millions of years and is supposed to last for a long time. It doesn't need individuals doing the work of Mother Nature. Well, it takes the material, basically oil and all that, to accumulate for millions or billions of years, I guess. And but they don't mind taking that and and burning it in a car because they make money off it, which is the same reason why they want to keep this, because they probably make money off the tourism that goes through there. So So that's, I mean, that's what it always comes down to. Canadian First Nation anti-fracking protests. They're arresting and pepper spraying. There's supposedly snipers there and torching cars. An anti-fracking protest descended into violence when 100 police officers sought to control hundreds of more than Canadian protesters who set the car on fire and threatened officers mounted on horseback. So, good chance that the person who set the car on fire was actually part of the Canadian police. So, 9 times out of 10, that's the case. You have to remember, when it comes down to the natural gas industry as well, they are some devious mofos, and they're good. And they handle these protests, you know, you see the fists with the black and all that. They carry out psychological operations, psyops. I've covered this before about the anti-fracking protesters being considered insurgents, and that's how these companies look at them as, and that's how they're treated, as terrorists. But that's an old thing, agent provocateurs. It's not anything new. It's been going on since workers are trying to demand better rights, you know, while they're being exploited during the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Radioactivity levels spiked 6,500 times at Fukushima well, so risen immensely recently. Cabbage contains radiation protective compounds, says study coming out of Russia. One of the healthiest staples of the Russian diet, cabbage, just added another feather to its cap. U.S. scientists have found that it contains a compound that protects rodents from potentially deadly doses of radiation. And there's other things too, including bentonite clay and I believe even baking soda, but you can do your own research on that. Smog emergency shuts city of 11 million people. Choking smog all but shut down one of the northeastern China's largest cities on Monday, forcing schools to suspended classes, snarling traffic, and closing airports. So that's going to damage their pocket, right? But it's that smog, the industrialization of China, that allows them to, you know, have all these things that they're going to be losing, you know, all the money that's going to be lost. Mexico bans GMO corn effective immediately. Mexico judges place an indefinite ban on GMO corn effective immediately. Monsanto, DuPont, Pioneer will no longer be able to or allowed to plant or sell their corn within the country's borders. Comes after 2 years, the Mexican government had put the Monsanto's GU corn on hold, citing basically a need for more tests. Mexico is also in the news for being the fattest country, so they're going to begin regulating food consumption. It says here that the House of Congress passed on Thursday a special tax on junk food that is seen as potentially the broadest of its kind, part of an ambitious Mexican government effort to contain runaway rates of obesity and diabetes. It's just a Western diet, really, it's what it is. And here's some of the countries that are overweight: Mexico, U.S., New Zealand, Chile, and UK. Some have already cast the blame: TV zombies and undereducated fatzos, saying we're a country of malnourished fatzos. This is a former state governor in Mexico. Wow, 7 of 10 adults in Mexico and a third of children are either overweight or obese. And you gotta love this, right, from the New Scientist, right? Is opposition to golden rice wicked? Remember that girl that was on the news defending, or not defending GMO, but basically going against GMO? She made a good argument about the golden rice and that. Genetically modified organisms could save millions of lives. So why did they develop it? Oh, for the, not just calories, but the quality of the food. They're talking about iron deficiency. I remember that girl saying they would have to eat like how much to actually, for it to actually, compensate. So, they say that they did it. They looked out at the math by Greenpeace. They said it wasn't right, so we're going to use their math. But it doesn't matter. It's GMO, and it could have some health effects. And like that guy said in that interview with that girl, the activist, he said that we're the guinea pigs. So that's what it is. One of the cleverest tricks of the anti-GMO movement is to link GMOs so closely to Monsanto. But you know that eventually they want to cull the population once they go to robots, completely automation. Orwellian High School preaches in Indiana population control to students. It's up to you, no more than 2. That's the message. In Argentina, they're saying these agro-petrochemicals are causing birth defects and cancer. In one town, 80% of the kids have pesticides in their blood. After a bunch of people got sick, is our chicken safe to eat? Oh, we better go ahead and outsource that chicken to China. Yeah, they said they're going to allow the poultry to be slaughtered in the U.S. and Canada, processed in China, and returned to the U.S. for consumption. Now, that makes a lot of sense, right? And recently had a level 3 outage in the East Coast for the internet. Reports saying that there's massive vulnerability detected in the national power grids. They're talking about attacks, but not just attacks. It could just go down, bad storms and that. And don't forget the water supply that's also decaying, but they're charging you even more now. Anyways, this is GGN.